Does the Big 12 ever disappoint? We had another wild weekend of college football in the Big 12 with a couple surprising upsets, several blowouts, but most importantly, a lot of mixing up in this week's power rankings. So, welcome to Saturday's Warrior. I'm Trevor, and in this channel, we talk BYU, Big 12, realignment, and all that good stuff. So, before we get into this week's power rankings, we ask that you please like this video and subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 700 subscribers, another big milestone. Help us reach that and help this channel to keep growing. So now that you've done that, you've liked and subscribed, shared, hit that bell, all that good stuff. Without any further ado, let's get into our power rankings for this week. Another week and another team at the top of our power rankings in the Big 12. Of course, Texas had previously been there in the season, and then they dropped after losing to Oklahoma. And they won this week, even though it wasn't the most convincing win over a struggling TCU team. They are the only team in the Big 12 currently with only one loss in conference play, and with only 2 games left against what should be lesser competition. It looks like Texas they do really control their own destiny, and really looks like they are set up to continue to ride that into the conference championship game. So they are deserving of this number 1 spot, all the momentum going their way late. And so it goes to say something about having losses early enough in the season that you have time to recover from them, and Texas definitely has. And at number 2, unfortunately, Oklahoma is back there. That means the 2 outgoing teams are back in those top 2 slots of our power conference, which is not what we wanted to see at all. Now, Oklahoma does have a slightly tougher, well, I guess it depends on who you ask, schedule than Texas, mostly because they don't control their own destiny. Oklahoma State owns the tiebreaker between them. And so, they definitely need some things to go their way that are now out of their control to make it in. But they had a very decisive win this week over a pretty good West Virginia team. And so that was enough to propel them up to the 2nd spot. And then at 3, we have Kansas State, which is where they were last week. They also had a very convincing win this week, but unfortunately, they have a little bit more ahead of them in order to win out. They've got a tough rivalry game this week against Kansas, and then following week with Iowa State. So they've got their work cut out for them, but they definitely look like they are up to the task. And I would love to see, any of the legacy Big 12 schools which are staying in the conference, beat out Oklahoma and or Texas somehow and get into that conference championship game. Kansas State has a path there, so I would love to see that if they're able to make that over one of those teams. Oklahoma State, now they dropped. I do think that they are better than perhaps number 4 in the conference. I do still think, as bad as that loss was this week, which is why they fell as far as they did, that they are still deserving of a top 4 spot. They have shown that they have just been dominant ever since really flipping a switch and winning against, I believe it was Kansas State was their real first come-out win, and have just been rolling since then. So, but that loss was just an absolute drubbing, and it was one that Adam and I had talked about in our predictions for the week. We thought, there is a chance that UCF pulls this off. Like we think that they are better than what their record suggests. It is at the bounce house, and with John Rice Plumlee back, and then Oklahoma State might be coming off of a high, beating Oklahoma in the final bedlam, and then maybe not be quite as focused. And then on top of that, something we didn't predict was all the weather in Florida, and apparently their equipment manager also did not predict that because they didn't have enough towels or tents or anything. So that probably played a role in it too. My daughter asked me, well, why don't they share with them? And obviously UCF had zero incentive to share any of their supplies with Oklahoma State. And but all that said, it was still quite an embarrassing loss. So anyway, Oklahoma State also in that whole tiebreaker situation, Iowa State owning that over them. So they definitely need to finish out strong, but they also have some games lined up for them that should allow them to do just that, and then hope that somebody along the way messes up and loses a game that they may or may not be expected to. So anyway, that's our top four. I feel pretty good about those being the top four teams in the conference. And then this is kind of a sub tier of the haves and have-nots. We got Iowa State. They did move up, and yes, they had the best game of their season, but so far it seems like everybody lately has been having the best game of their season against BYU. So I don't want to give them too much credit for them and move them ahead of Oklahoma State, but it is enough to move them ahead of Kansas, who had a somewhat surprising loss against Texas Tech, who's been kind of all over the place this season and certainly has a lot of potential. It wasn't the worst loss, but up until now, Kansas only had like very solid losses, and that one's a little bit more of a blemish on the record. Also, I feel like they took a hit momentum-wise because Iowa State controls their destiny. They can win out, and that puts them in strong position for making it to the conference championship game, whereas Kansas is now really kind of, it seems like, out of that picture at this point. So that is why I have them dropping there past Iowa State, but still ahead of West Virginia, who just got completely demolished by Oklahoma, coming off of a high of week of also having a game of their season against BYU. So, guys, let me warn you, don't read too much into these wins over BYU. Don't let that inflate you and your self-worth, because right now it's saying more about who BYU is and less about who you are. So you got to stay focused after you get those wins against BYU. All right. Next is Texas Tech. And now, again, I still have this. It's been weeks now that we've had basically these same top seven in various orders and these same bottom seven. So Texas Tech did get that win over Kansas. I don't think it was enough to move them into that top tier just yet. Again, as I don't want to read too much into that win that West Virginia had over BYU, I also don't want to read too much in that loss to Oklahoma, because that is a very good team. So I think we want to see a little more from West Virginia. But if Texas Tech, they have a chance to certainly move up as they finish out their schedule, especially as they end the season with a game against Texas. If they win that one and possibly even, I'm not sure if that's possible, but at least not make them lose, but possibly knocking them out of the conference championship game, they definitely would move up into that upper half in my book, as well as make it bowl eligible. At number 9, UCF, who's been near the very bottom for so long, finally moved up after that complete drubbing of Oklahoma State. Now, we already discussed that, so I won't get into it too much, but, I felt for a lot of the season that they were better than what their record suggested. They played a lot of good teams, like that Kansas State game, really well. Then they had the injury to Plumlee, and then they get him back, and they've kind of started figuring things out again. Of course, one was a win over Cincy, and then a game with the Elements against Oklahoma State. But nonetheless, they were capitalizing on it, and their schedule was lined up for them to have a very nice, strong end to their season and make 7 games, which was the over-under exactly. So for me, they are kind of up at this upper echelon of the bottom half of the conference. And at 10, we have TCU. And yeah, they lost, and it was a close game to Texas, so it was not a bad loss by any means. But boy, they've definitely fallen from where everyone thought they would be. And with all the turnover, can't hit them too hard, but it's looking worse now than even what we were expecting before the season. So they drop a spot. Houston also drops a spot after losing to Cincy, who has really struggled this season. So Houston's been all over the place as well, but they're still ahead of Baylor, who also lost and got completely demolished. Plus, Houston had the head-to-head. So this one is interesting because now we've got Cincy finally moving out of the bottom spot. I did not think it was going to happen for the rest of the season. They finally pulled out a win against someone in the conference. Granted, it was another new school that was also struggled, but it is a win nonetheless, and it was a road win. Whereas BYU has had their third blowout loss, and this one at home at night to a team that really has struggled scoring the ball. That is not Iowa State's strong suit, and BYU just could not really put it together. So I think that along with Cincy's first conference win drops the Cougars to the bottom spot, unfortunately, and it's not looking great for them as they've got both Oklahoma and then at Oklahoma State to finish off the season. So those are our Big 12 power rankings heading into Week 12, and please let us know in the comments what you think we got right, what you think we got wrong, and while you're down there, may as well go ahead and give us your full list of power rankings for the Big 12. And also come join us on Tuesday nights. Adam and I record our picks and predictions for the upcoming week. We also review a little bit of the previous week. And we're now doing that live on Tuesday nights. We're aiming for 8:30 to start that. So please join us for that. I want to see the comments and have people join along with us, or catch the video after the fact. Either way is good. And then we'll also get some live reactions to you after the BYU-Oklahoma game this weekend, as well as any other videos. I've been a bit busy, but as time permits, get some other ones out there. But anyway, thank you for joining. Please, again, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and always go Cougs.